Will fracking solve the energy crisis? Welcome to Mark and Pete. Here's a thought.
Nervous energy. A town that was energy lacking turned to the idea of fracking. Their homes started to shake and foundations did quake. Now life is very nerve-wracking. Yes, environmentalists are very concerned about the concept of fracking. However, the government, facing a backlash from its own MPs over its decision to lift the ban on fracking in England. Now, the business secretary, Jacob Rees-Mogg, promised local people would be consulted before fracking gets underway in their local area. Well, it goes even further than that because Labour's shadow climate change secretary, Ed Miliband, has also targeted Rees-Mogg, and he has claimed that Rees-Mogg is creating a charter for earthquakes. Is this the case? Well, we do have an energy crisis on our hands. Clergyman Pete, I ask you, is fracking the answer?
Well, business and Mark, I think it can be part of the answer. I mean, obviously, I'm concerned, as a vicar in a part of a community, interested in the welfare of the local people in the community. I don't want there to be earthquakes, but I don't see the evidence that there are going to be earthquakes. There are tremors caused by the process of fracking, which involves, a splitting of the rock under the surface, and so
Yes.
You're going to have some tremors. But Britain is certainly not susceptible to massive earthquakes. We're not living on the San Andreas Fault, after all. So I think these are overblown, and it's a political stance by Ed Miliband to blow up the risks involved in order to provide a critique of the government policy. But I think it's possibly a part of us stepping towards a solution to the energy crisis by moving us as a country closer towards being energy independent, which when there are uncertain times around, especially getting fuel from abroad because of wars and other things that are happening at the moment, which result in the fuel being either becoming too expensive or not even making it here at all, that can only be a good thing. So I think it can be part of a solution.
Yes. Well, I think we should probably sort of air the concerns of why many environmental lobbyists, and particularly those people who are in communities such as Lancashire and many, many others around the England area, are sort of referring to a few things that have already been scientifically studied. So back in 2019, at an oil and gas exploration company, Quadrilla's fracking site in Lancashire, there were more than 120 tremors that were recorded. Now, it needs to be put into context because these were seen to be too small to be felt. However, of course, many of the British Geological Society, the BGS, also considered some of the science behind this particular technique. Now, the thing here is that what's also a bit of a concern is that it's inconclusive because they claim that forecasting the occurrence of large earthquakes remains a scientific challenge for the geoscience community. Now, okay, so the fact of the matter is it has to be done case by case because each community geologically is different. So as we all know, the whole concept of shale rock, for example, has small faults in them. And these are the areas of stress. The principle being is that you drill into them with water injected into the rock with special water lubricants in the shale. And that moves the rock, fragments it effectively, shakes it along these faults. And that brings the tremor and effectively releases the gas. We have an abundance of these particular areas. Should we actually exploit them? Is it the right strategy? Well, I think a lot of people are certainly thinking about it from a business perspective. From my point of view, I actually think it has to be done case by case. And the fact is we need to move quickly. Why? We're in an energy crisis. You could argue it's a bit too late because, as Clergyman Pete has already highlighted, if we were really going to exploit the energy or potential energy that's there, maybe previous governments should have actually already pushed this forward and started to extract some of the gas. Now, what I would say here is that there is no doubt that anyone who lives near a site is going to be concerned. Will it affect their houses? Will it affect their community? What does it really mean for the long-term impact of the environment? But the fact is, you can't get away from that we need the energy. We need the energy to fuel the rest of the nation. We need it to fuel our homes, our businesses, our schools, our hospitals, etc. We cannot rely on energy from other foreign sources alone. Now, fracking is definitely something that is being explored more and more. I will say that as techniques, it's getting tighter and tighter and better and better. The techniques are being more mastered by other nations. Fracking doesn't just occur, of course, potentially in the United Kingdom. It occurs in the United States and many other countries who have started to use this technique. So, look, we know that obviously this does affect communities, clergymen, Pete. But what the government has said, and particularly Rees-Mogg, is that people would be compensated. So the point here is that it's not ideal, but should we be thinking that it's actually for the greater good if you are going to be affected?
Well, I think the point is you wouldn't consider going this route if there weren't any possibility of you becoming independent and, in fact, heading towards being a net exporter of energy, which Liz Truss, the Prime Minister, has the aim of being by 2040, she stated in an earlier address. So you can say that you can see that if, in fact, there is a possibility of that, and a contribution could be made from fracking, so that you actually manage it, it pushes you over the top, so to speak, then it's worth doing. I mean, the reason that we can say that it's possible is there are supplies of gas still available in the North Sea that we could be accessing, and there are also plentiful supplies of coal in the country. It hasn't been financially viable to mine them, but if the conditions are right, the coal is there, and so you can have coal, you can have fracking. And if you are concerned with the shower gas from fracking, then think again, because the actual gas is, of course, a clean product. It's cleaner than coal, and it produces less pollution, less carbon dioxide actually. So it's if you are concerned about that, then you should be, the Green Lobby, for example, should be more in favour of shower gas than of coal, because you don't want extra pollution, and this will reduce the amount that it's necessary to burn. So I think all in all, it could be an important part of security for the future, and I wouldn't be saying it if I thought that there was a genuine danger to the people near where the fracking was happening. I think what the only danger that could possibly be is if the tremor is so big that it causes a building to shake and something to fall down. I think that's what the concern is with referring to earthquakes. But there's no real evidence that that's happened. And remember that fracking was being trialled in Britain until 2019, from the Green Lobby, where it basically campaigned and it was shut down. So it's been tried. These scenarios of earthquakes ruining people's houses and being dangerous didn't transpire, and there's no evidence that they will. Of course, it's a risk. There's always a risk, but I would say, on balance, the security of the entire country mean, yes, that it is a risk worth taking.
Well, exactly. And this is the point of the government. Even though that we know that people like Ed Miliband are now pushing back, saying we now have an energy policy run for big fossil fuel interests, not for the British people. No to windfall tax and yes to dangerous, unsafe fracking, he said. But of course, Mr. Rees-Mogg has come back saying fracking was in the national interest and would make the country richer. Yes. Well, I don't know whether it would necessarily make us richer, but I think what it will do is make us much more sustainable and self-contained in terms of being able to manage our entire energy resources. I think also we have to accept that we're not going to be completely self-sufficient, but what it will do bearing in mind what we've seen with the issues over Russia and the challenges there. And it's not just Russia alone. We have to accept that there are other providers where we import oil and gas. So Mr. Rees-Mogg's point is valid. Now, what he is saying as a final point on this is that he suggested current limits on acceptable levels of seismic activity are too restrictive, and said that the government is determined to realise any potential resources of domestic gas. So the point here is, folks, this subject is not going to go away. I'd be interested to know whether we've got some of our listeners, our lovely listeners, who are near some fracking sites, and what do they think about this subject, and what do they think should be done if they are against it? Are they going to lobby the government, or is it now that it's too late and we're just going to continue on this path of fracking?
Yes, just go to markandpete.com, subscribe, and you can leave a comment on this and any episode. But that's it from Mark and Pete for this week. And remember, we really do want to know from you what the frack is going on.